Hi, everybody. Joe Bozzella here for SELSource.com, SEL Radio, SEL Radio. We have a great guest on this morning. His name is Bryan McLaren. Good
Hey,
morning, Bryan.
hey, how's it going?
Everything is good. You're in your office and your production studio. I'm in our offices in North Scottsdale. It's great to have you on. Bryan, I'm going to have him introduce himself in a minute. I will tell you that he is a CEO of Zoned Properties, a publicly traded company that's based here in Scottsdale. And they're in a very unique, emerging entrepreneurial industry. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about his industry, how it differs from some other industries, and maybe how it doesn't differ from other industries.
That's right.
So with that, again, I'm going to welcome you to SELSource Radio, SELSource.com. If you're watching this anyplace else other than there, go there. There's a lot of free resources. And certainly if you enjoy this podcast, leave a comment down below. So Bryan, tell us a little bit. You're a good friend of mine. We've worked together for a couple of years. We've been able to share a lot of ideas and help each other in a lot of different ways, personally and professionally. But give us a little bit about your background, where you've been, where you are, how you got to where you are now, the CEO of a great company.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, and thanks for having me on the podcast. Give you the brief overview, and certainly for more information, you can find my profile on the SELSource partners pages. So yeah, Bryan McLaren, we're here in Scottsdale, Arizona, manage and run a company called Zoned Properties. We're a pretty straightforward real estate development firm that focuses on the regulated cannabis space. So we provide clients and projects with full suite of services. And really my background, my professional experience has been in sustainability development. So community-focused, complex organizational work, building businesses, building organizations, with a focus in trying to really increase prosperity in our communities. And that's really where the overlap for me here is in the past kind of 15 years as a sustainability professional, a development professional, trying to bring that community focus of good, responsible business and entrepreneurship to real estate and regulated cannabis projects. And that's exactly what we do at Zoned Properties.
And you have a subsidiary. I'm aware you have a subsidiary of Zoned Properties. I think I'll call it a subsidiary, Zoned Advisory Services. And
Yep.
tell us a little bit about that, because that is a great resource for people that are moving into the regulated cannabis industry.
Right. Yeah. And we essentially almost have three businesses within the business. So Zoned Properties, as you mentioned, is the publicly traded company. That's the parent company. And we do three things at the company as a strategic real estate firm. So we have an advisory group that works with clients on their regulated cannabis projects. We do everything from the complex zoning, permitting, compliance, design of these facilities, really working with our clients that are in the licensed regulated cannabis space as operators, advise them through that process. We have a licensed brokerage team that helps with real estate transactional work. And then really the third piece of all of this is the property holdings and development under Zoned Properties. So we own a little over 2 million square feet of property that has been permitted and regulated for cannabis, and we develop and lease those properties out to our own tenant operators and clients. So really what the company is trying to do is develop a system and a process for moving through the regulated cannabis space when you're developing a real estate project, and doing that in the responsible, compliant way that is going to improve the community rather than kind of scare your neighbors, upset your neighbors. This is a good thing. It's an economic development driver. It's a way to put money back into the community, create jobs, and it's an emerging industry. There's a lot of different opportunities that entrepreneurs are getting involved in.
And that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about this industry. It's a new industry. It seems like over the last decade, while we were sipping our craft beers and paying for overpriced martinis, this whole industry was born and emerged. And it's interesting. It's an industry I didn't know an awful lot about before I met you. I know more about it now. And I know you're considered an expert in the industry nationally. So tell us about, pot, weed, cannabis, whatever we call this thing. Tell us about this industry. Give us a brief history of the universe of pot,
Yep.
where it was 10 years ago, where it is today.
Yeah. So it's a really cool industry. I mean, for me, what makes me really excited is the industry is being born before our eyes. So, we've had kind of Nixon era propaganda, the war on drugs for the past 75, soon 100 years of this anti-marijuana, anti-pot system, where still today, the federal government views marijuana, cannabis as a controlled level 1 substance, federally illegal to grow, sell, distribute. And so what's happened is, as this grassroots movement of advocates for this plant, for the weed plant, have seen medicinal qualities, have seen really limited negative consequences from pot. So essentially what the opposite of what the federal government has said. And so in their own states, state by state, these advocacy groups, and the big ones in the industry are NORML, some of the different MJ groups that are really community leaders, that are social justice advocates. So state by state, this plant has been legalized, decriminalized for medicinal, recreational adult use. And today, we've got 33 states in the District of Columbia that have legalized in some fashion. So really in the past 10 years, the mid-2000s up to today in 2019, we've seen the move kind of past the tipping point where advocates, consumers, voters have said, we don't want to wait for our regulatory system, for our legislative system to birth this industry. We're going to do it ourselves. And so it's really great in the evolution of marijuana. You've seen the state by state, hundreds of thousands, millions of people now, and the polling shows easily 2/3 of Americans support medical pot. Similar numbers between 50 and 70% on various polls support full federal legalization. So now today we're at this point where this industry has been born on the community level. Significant economic driver. We're seeing $100 billion market emerge, and that has created a circumstance where a huge group of entrepreneurial business leaders, subject matter experts are starting to emerge within the regulated cannabis industry. And that's really where we are today. Huge business opportunities, huge product creation, innovation, technology platforms. So it's a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, and I'm not a pot guy. I prefer a glass of Cabernet.
Strong martini.
However, I do understand the healing nature of the drug, and certainly CBD oil, devoid of THC, helps many people in many areas. I think that can't be refuted. So obviously, and I'm going to ask you about the future of the industry as we wind up. So we'll take a pause on that. So thank you for catching us up to where we're at today. So this SEL Radio, the show, everything we do in the SEL platform is about sales entrepreneur leaders in business. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, who does this industry attract? I want you, and you've offline, we've shared stories about very interesting characters that have come into this business and the characteristics and behaviors of those people. But tell us a little bit about the wide range of people that this industry has attracted.
Sure. Yeah, so the majority of the industry was born, again, as the advocacy happened and legalization happened at the community level, a grassroots movement. That's really the same way the businesses, the entrepreneurs have emerged. So these are oftentimes growers or bakers or kind of marketing specialists that have been in the regulated cannabis, in the marijuana industry for decades, generations as specialists. So your classic experienced grower that's been growing in Northern California, he's a third generation agriculturalist, and he as the third generation specialized in growing weed. And so the industry was born of these people who've really gathered that expertise, but in an underground way. So by definition, years ago, when the first few states were legalizing, Colorado, Arizona, Oregon, Washington, by definition, you took a group of professional specialists that were considered criminals and you merged them with other business professionals. And it's an interesting cycle. Yeah, as prohibition has lifted, And essentially these specialists that are specialized in their area of the marijuana process, so whether that's growing or harvesting or processing or infusing into these edibles or making products, they have had to learn every other piece of the business practice. So whereas before they're growing in their backyard or on a farm in the forest, they didn't have to worry about putting together business organizational structures, payroll practices, insurance, managing budgets and forecasting for cash expenses. Really, that entrepreneurial side of this, that other side merging with the business matter experts, how to build a systemed organization that can scale and grow quality products in a quality marketplace.
So I'm going to say it my way, and I want you to confirm that I kind of got it and our audience gets it. Some people may be watching, some people may be listening, but I'm kind of using my hands now to go from low to high. People need to level up or scale up.
Yep.
They come into, I'm going to call them cowboys. They come into the business with a great product. Now they have to figure all the other aspects of running a business out. They have to level up.
Right. Have to level up. And what we're seeing, and we're going to move into this later in the conversation, the future of the industry, but I really see 2020 as a catalyst year. You know, there's been a lot of transitioning of the industry, but I really see 2020 as a transformative year, that catalyst, and exactly what you're talking about, Joe. The ability for these entrepreneurs to level up as the industry evolves, grows, expands. When you start getting into a $50, $100 billion industry sector, we're talking about significant organizations, significant investor dollars, and growth. And so that those cowboys, I think one of the challenges is that learning curve from being a specialist to then getting trapped into, rather than the approach of needing to know everything. So moving away, falling into the trap of becoming too generalist. I like to think of it as snipers versus shotguns. So the groups that I have seen do really well with their business models, with their growth in the emerging market, are the snipers. They know exactly what they do really well. They know what they don't do well, and they create strategic partnerships with other businesses to provide those, fill in those gaps.
Okay, so stop on that for a minute. I want to go backwards. I want to get to that, but I want to go backwards and make sure I'm getting it. And again, our audience is hearing it clearly. So there's this great new industry that's been made possible through medical legalization, recreational legalization. People have great products because they are quote unquote master growers, which is, you told me earlier, is an overused term when we were talking offline. But people come into the business, they're cowboys, they're in some cases criminals, and they have to level up. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But are there also now, is this the convergence of corporate America, people that have been running businesses for years, selling other products and services that really know nothing about the product per se, or even the industry, but they understand how to run a business? They're coming in. So you have an influx of people that actually understand business and financial feasibility and marketing and distribution and packaging. So they're coming in at the same time the cowboys are trying to figure out how to level up. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. So I think what you're alluding to, Joe, is this process of pot specialists needing to learn about business versus experienced, vetted business professionals that are now learning about the product. So those professionals that know how to build an organizational system can pretty quickly learn about a specific product by finding product specialists. Whereas those business pot entrepreneurs that are trying to build a business from scratch, their learning curve is a lot more challenging of having to figure out how to build an entire business organization. And so what I've observed and noticed is that the really successful groups have combined those. The pot specialists have realized that they can't do it all on their own, and the business professionals have realized they need to find the right cannabis, marijuana experts. They combine forces, and that's really how you get to that level up. And that's where I think we're starting to really see corporate America come into the industry, big alcohol, big pharma, but I think we'll get to that in a moment.
So here's a dumb question. What do you think is easier to learn? And I think I know the answer. Is it easier for someone who's really a dyed-in-the-wool true entrepreneur that understands how to launch, scale, grow, vision a business up? Is that easier to learn, or is it easier just to learn the product? If that person comes in, is it easier for them to adapt to the product, or is it easier for the cowboy to learn everything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that question, I would say, is broken into two pieces. For the majority of the industry, the cannabis industry, it's far easier for the business professional to learn about the product than for the cowboy to try and, wrangle the entire herd as a business organization.
Okay.
However, I would say, Joe, that for some parts of the industry, like selection of which kinds of products do well in which consumer markets, that is incredibly challenging to learn unless you understand this plant and this product as a connoisseur, as a consumer, just like some of the best vineyards are run by lovers of wine. So
right.
Similar, but everything else, all the ancillary businesses. So for us, for example, for real estate, we've been at this now for about 6 years as Zone Properties. I've learned a lot about the pot plant. I'm not a consumer myself, but I don't necessarily need to know everything about that pot plant beyond a certain superficial level. I just need to know what our clients need from us in developing a facility, designing different parts of those facilities, or really the ancillary parts of this industry, just like packaging. So someone who knows really well branded packaging, just like in any business, there's these ancillary factors of this product that will cross many industries. The packaging for herb products in the grocery store might not be that uncommon from some pot products. So a long-winded answer, but I'd say definitely easier for a business professional and entrepreneur to learn about this product for most parts of the market.
And or hire to some of the fine areas.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, you want to bring in those master growers.
Right. If I stepped into the industry, I couldn't get behind the counter when someone walked in and said, I just want to mellow high. I don't want to be paranoid. I don't want to get wasted. I wouldn't sell them the Bubba Kush. I'd sell them the sativa.
Sure. Yep.
Did I just give myself away?
I think you're a pot professional here, Joe.
No, I'm not a pot guy. I have a lot of friends who smoke pot. And legally in California and Oregon and Nevada. So this begs for me to go another direction with you, because this is first and foremost, we're talking about the industry. We're talking about weed, pot, cannabis, whatever we want to call it. But we're talking about entrepreneurialism, and we're talking about building a business, scaling a business, launching a business in the first place. So let's go to this from your perspective, and you're an absolute expert. You're a recognized expert in this industry, and you advise many, many companies that are getting into the industry through zoned advisory. What areas or zones of building a business, the entrepreneurial zones that we recognize, what areas are most people devoid in, lacking experience in? What are some of the toughest areas that you see are just a big black hole of experience or expertise?
Yeah, Joe, that's the perfect question. And it's really, to me, put in two different buckets. So the simpler one is where there's a real challenge for almost everyone, is the back office. So understanding and learning on the fly as a cannabis professional, what do you need to do to keep your system running? What do you need to do to fuel the engine? So that's everything from insurance to finance to team organization to recruiting and human resources. So your back office, that's a real challenge because people are trying to reinvent the wheel. The bigger system I find, especially with our clients and on our projects, where the industry is really struggling, is in regulatory compliance. So just like every other industry, I mean, one of the interesting things I kind of laugh to myself whenever I hear it is people like to say that cannabis is the most difficult regulatory industry in our country. And I think they just don't understand that in insurance, in pharmaceutical sales, in a lot of other industries, there is significant regulatory compliance, and cannabis is no different. So a lot of groups really struggle with how to deal with a volatile regulatory environment. So that is unique to cannabis. Because this has been legalized on a market-to-market basis, sometimes as deep down as the local city community level. So for real estate, the permitting process, the zoning process is likely different in every single location for every project. So that's decently unique right now to cannabis. And that's what a lot of groups struggle with. And especially if they don't have their back office, their home base, their business organizational system hammered down, a big regulatory change can limit their ability to pivot quickly. And that's a huge business skill that the successful groups have been able to do, is that when the market environment changes, you pivot quickly to take advantage of the opportunity. Just like in any entrepreneurial field, you're hunting for that market opportunity and looking for the best, most efficient way to address that opportunity and take advantage of the risk reward profile.
And I don't think that, as we often talk about, and I'll full disclosure, Bryan is also a member of Advance AZ, our local peer advisory group. He's a founding member of one of our groups. And so we know from that work in those groups, many entrepreneurs, many business owners are siloed. They're isolated in their daily activities. So really what I hear you saying is these guys get into business and there's a change in regulations, there's a change in the market, and that pivot, that they could pivot accidentally, but really what you're saying is they need to pivot intentionally in the right direction because they're being coached well, advised well, and sometimes that just means they have a company like a company within a company's own advisory on their side, or they've gone out and selected the right external partners to be a Sherpa guide through some of those issues.
Right. Yeah, the cannabis Sherpas certainly are assisting many organizations. I mean, I think that's, for listeners of the podcast, listeners of this session, one of the big takeaways, I would say, in learning about the cannabis industry, not only as you've mentioned, and we've just discussed, Joe, that it's very similar to almost every other entrepreneurial emerging industry. It's not necessarily unique in that fashion. But a big takeaway for the listeners, I would say, is that cannabis is not this big, Pandora's box. It's because it is emerging just like a lot of other industries, there are a lot of entry points to get involved. There are a lot of ways that as this $100 billion industry is emerging on the continent, an industry that size, organizations as big as some of the billion-dollar companies that are emerging in cannabis, they need every business service that every other sector needs. And so there's a lot of opportunity for entry points into the market for anyone listening to this that may be looking to start up their own company or pivot their existing company. Just where's the market opportunity?
Good. And when we wind up here in just a couple of minutes, I'm going to ask you to tell people how they could reach you.
Sure.
Reminding me of that, I just made a note. I don't want to forget. People want to reach you. We want to give them that information. But 2 questions as we wind up, kind of rapid fire. And you've seen a lot of people crash and burn. You've told me about companies and individuals crashing and burning. When they crash and burn, what does it feel like? What does it look like? What have they been unwilling to do?
Yeah, it's funny. All my responses here are two buckets of answers. I think it's kind of binary, what I've noticed in the people who crash and burn. I mean, certainly there are plenty of groups that use the fail forward mentality, and those are the groups that are succeeding today, that you can't have success without failure, right? But the true groups, the cowboys, whoever, that have crashed and burned, it's groups that were trying to take shortcuts, not building out the business mechanism the right way, and that all of a sudden, the house of cards has fallen apart, right? Or they're trying to do too many things at once. They're not specializing in knowing what they do really well, staying in their lane. You don't have to do everything. And those groups sometimes just vanish.
Right.
The second group, and this is a big challenge for the cannabis industry, the second group are those entrepreneurs that maybe just don't want to put up with the difficulties of building that business. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to. They don't want to navigate the complexity, right? And so what we've been observing is that a lot of these groups, rather than building a regulated, challenging business, they just revert back to the illicit, illegal market. They go back to growing in their garage, selling on the street corner. They can't keep up with the taxes or the changes in compliance, or they just, they don't want to do the work that we all love as business professionals. So we're kind of observing those are kind of the cowboys that just go back to doing what they do best.
So what I heard from you is there's two buckets or two reasons predominantly that people fail in the industry. And one is they fail to find their chicken sandwich, their core focus. They get all over the place. They bounce all over the place. They don't focus on one great idea. And then secondly, they're just too lazy. They don't commit to growing and figuring out what it's going to take for them personally and professionally to level up and get to a place. So the weed industry weeds those two people out.
Right. It might be a little harsh. My word of calling people lazy that have failed. Certainly there are plenty of lazy people. But I think it's also just inexperience. Ego gets involved. It's okay to say you don't know something. It's okay to reach out for help. It's okay to make mistakes. One of the only ways Zoned Properties and our team have become subject matter experts and are able to advise all these companies is we've gone up through the difficult challenges of this emerging industry, and we've stepped on just about every landmine that's out there. So hard work, determination. I mean, to me, it's a balance of persistence and patience, and that creates progress. And if you just take a breath when things get difficult, understand that the road is going to be challenging, nothing is easy, and then just get up every day and keep grinding towards the goal. Have the clear mission, the clear vision, and put a strategic plan in place to accomplish that.
The big takeaway for me as I listen to you talk about this industry, and you're probably feeling this way too, guess what? It's no different than any other industry.
Yep, exactly. You're still building a business organization. You're still looking for a market challenge or a market need to provide a product or service. And at the end of the day, if the consumers demand that, you'll do very well if you can keep up with a scalable system.
Give us 1 minute on what the future may look like for this industry.
Yeah, it's every year over the past kind of 6 to 8 years, really 6 years in Zoned Properties, I think about this every year, and it's, I may just continue to say the same thing, but I really truly believe that 2020 is going to be a transformative year. There are legitimate conversations being had in Congress at the federal level about how to approach insurance, banking, decriminalizing, this product, this plant that has been very inappropriately criminalized, many believe, over the past 75 years. So I see a lot more states. We're probably going to have 2-digit, several handfuls of states looking for future legalization. So that 33, 34 number will likely rise above closer to 40 pretty soon. I wouldn't be able to speculate on kind of full federal legalization. There's so many factors there, but we were really starting to see 2019. We saw a lot of huge business getting involved, big alcohol, big pharma, big investment capital. I mean, there's real money now coming into this industry from corporate giants. And that is going to be an interesting tension point for the community advocacy, grassroots way this industry emerged and was born, now coming into the corporate giant world, Wall Street, big banking, all that stuff. So I think it's going to continue to expand rapidly. 2020 will be a transformative year, and we're starting to see a lot of really exciting projects come up. So
it's interesting. This was great. How could people get a hold of you, Bryan, if they want to chat with you or if they have a need to?
Yeah, absolutely. So easiest way is to go to our website, zonedproperties.com. All our social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram is all at Zoned Properties. And just send me an email, Bryan, Bryan, at zonedproperties.com. Happy to always have a conversation about cannabis. It's exciting, it's sexy, it's fun, and happy to chat with anyone out there that's interested.
Absolutely, and I appreciate our professional affiliation. It kind of runs personally, professionally in a couple areas. Bryan is also a certified CAP equation instructor. The CAP equation is my first book. A quick commercial available on Amazon, the CAP equation, foolproof formula for unlimited success in sales. And Bryan, you decided to become a CAP certified instructor because you love the process of selling the marketing and sales process. So.
Yep. Yeah, I love it. Love the program and definitely recommend the book. I send it out to quite a few different cannabis professionals. Exactly the point of this conversation, Joe. That CAP equation piece of having the good competencies and the attitudes and the systems in place to really be a good salesperson, run a good business. I mean, really, that CAP equation is a great overview and a must read for any business entrepreneur for sure.
Well, thank you. We have sold a few books over the years. we're thrilled at the shelf life that this book has had, and we have a couple sequels coming out. So you know where to find Bryan. And sellsource.com is where you should be if you're watching this anyplace else. A lot of free resources there. We also have a subscription base for those that are a little more serious about taking themselves to the next level. And you can inquire about that. If you like this video, leave a comment below. And I'm going to sign off. First of all, I'm going to thank you. Thank you very much, Bryan, for
Thanks, Joe.
Educating and elucidating us on this strange new industry. We loved having you on. And I'll sign off as I do every time, telling you that it's your job to get better at what you do every day, and also maybe consider taking a few people along with you. Teach people what you know. That makes the world a better place. So thanks, Bryan. We'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody. Take care.